I won 1000 games with this simple opening. It's called the Philidor defense. It starts with the move d6. You play knight to f6. The beauty is you can play against absolutely everything. You don't care what your opponent is doing. And especially under 2000, it's just absolutely killing. They can play different stuff. Bishop d3 is one of the ways to defend the pawn. And then you always play this move e5. You immediately attack this pawn on d4. A lot of players, especially low-rated, played here the move d5. It's just drawn conceptually because they do not attack the e5 pawn anymore, so there is no pressure, and we can just safely go for our plan. I have an entire course based on this specific opening, so you can dive 1000 times deeper, build a whole holistic opening repertoire both for white and black. The link would be in the description. Right now, you get an amazing offer of a complete month of live coaching with me included in the course for free. Take advantage of that before it's too late. c4, all right, let's just castle. We have a very good version of the opening where this knight is gonna get to c5, a beautiful square for it. So let's just go for it. And then we need to figure out the plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's essential to have this one strategic idea that we are gonna play here. I like the move knight c5 first. It attacks the bishop, so I'm not afraid of the move b4. But first, you need to remember this knight on c5 is really great in this opening, so try to push it there, but make sure it cannot be attacked with the move b4. To avoid that, we simply play a5, and now it's rock solid there. So this pawn chain helps us to understand the direction of our plan. It's in this way, which means we need to continue it. And that means f5 is our next move. I feel like my opponent doesn't have a real plan. He makes one move here, one move there. It's never a good strategy in chess. By the way, very strong 2050 elo rated guy. So I think we are ready for knight to e8 and f5, typical idea here. We can even strengthen it with g6 and knight g7 if needed. Or sometimes we just play bishop g5 with an idea to exchange this dark squares bishop. If your pawns are on the dark squares, then it's great for you to exchange the dark squares bishop. It cannot be very active anyway. Yes, he plays g4 to stop our f5 idea. That is very cool. But first, we can still make it possible via g6. We just need to be a little bit careful. That would open up the king. Or alternatively, we can just play bishop g5 for now. I think I like it even more. Yes, I'm gonna play bishop g5. This is a very interesting positional idea. This knight on c5 is basically untouchable now that b4 is never possible. And this bishop on c2 is simply stupid. As long as we don't play f5, once we do that, it becomes more active. So maybe we need to think twice about that. But if we do not play f5, then what is our plan? You might say we can attack this pawn on c4, but he's gonna just defend it with b3 and then the bishop is useless. d6, I also don't really see the point. He can always just take back or maybe even take with the knight, and the knight on d5 would be fantastic. We don't need to be in a hurry with taking because he cannot avoid it anyway. So maybe let's play g6 for now, just making this useful move. For example, if the knight goes to g3, it wants to get to f5 or h5. Now it's not gonna be possible. And we made a loop for our king, as well as created this g7 spot for the knight. And our opponent has to guess whether we are gonna play f5 or not. He always has to calculate that, which is good news for us. Queen takes g5. I think after this exchange, we definitely have zero opening problems. And now it's about us overtaking the initiative. This is how powerful this opening is. Yeah, the endgame should be great for me. I don't need to worry about the checkmating ideas without the queens on the board, which means I can safely think about this f5 plan breakthrough. Once I do that, I'm going to be very active. Knight g3, let's calculate if we can play f5 immediately. So first of all, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. That would be enough. And if we exchange absolutely everything on the f5 square, I think it would be better for us. We're gonna have this target. This knight is much better than this guy. The second rook would be able to join the game. I think I'm gonna go for it. I don't see a single problem. He might have a check, but I will just step away and there is absolutely no threat he can create. But if he doesn't take on f5, then yeah, well, we even have a threat of just taking and attacking the f2 pawn. So it's simple for him to ignore it. One thing I want you to remember, you don't want to play f4 in such a position. At least after this exchange, because he's gonna have a very nice outpost on e4, this diagonal very active, whereas our pieces would be passive. But this is all good. Now if he doesn't take, we're gonna get to d4 with the knights. That would be a dream case scenario. And this pawn is like weak forever. The entire life our opponent has now to deal with this weakness. Apart from that, this pawn is always going to be a weakness. This pawn is going to be a weakness. Like we can go to f4 and attack it. He cannot play b3, like after this bishop is going to be exchanged, because we are going to just take it. But then how do you defend this pawn? I think my opponent is in big trouble. Whereas we have a very solid pawn structure. When you have a long pawn chain, it's all about the base pawn, making sure that it's safe. And the only way to attack it would be like to penetrate here, but I think that is too slow. I will never give my opponent such a chance. All right, he's provoking me to like go knight d4, but then he's gonna have this discover check. I don't think I want to allow him that. I think I should just play that. King h8, basically that would transpose, if instead he would play knight x5, bishop takes, and then rook g1, I would play king h8 anyway. Yes, so that is what happens. And this pawn on f2 is already under attack. I mean, I'm threatening to take and then take here. So it's my opponent who has to solve some problems here, which is very nice outcome of the opening. And actually, I'm being too kind to my opponent. I think strategically he's just completely busted here. I just need to be a little bit careful with these threats, like not to blunder a checkmate over here or something. So rook to f8 brings the last piece into the game and creates a threat. Rook f2 is indeed a threat because of the check. So he plays that. I don't know, I have so many interesting ideas. Knight b3 followed up by knight d4. Cementing this knight in the center is very powerful. Like where this king is gonna go. If it goes here, I have a check, rook f3, and then at least take a pawn. This is another weakness that my opponent has. He goes backwards. I mean, I assume that after knight b3, he's gonna play that, the only active square for him. But then after knight d4, he cannot go there or there because knight f3 would be a fork. He cannot go there because the pawn is hanging, so he must play here if he wants to defend. No, he can also go there, but that feels very passive. Like after knight f3, he has to play rook h1, which is horrible, and then knight d2 would win a pawn. So he has to play here, but then rook f3. Wait, that's almost a checkmate. In a 4 rook f4 checkmate. So he has to go there, and then I win a pawn. I hope you can still follow my variations. It feels like knight b3 almost wins the game. But I should be pretty fast, because if I give him time, he can play knight b5 himself, attack this base pawn, you remember, the weakest one, also get somewhere here, and then, yeah, it's not that simple. So it's important to create threats. Another way to create threat might be to play rook f4, just attacking this pawn immediately. Knight b5, I take it here, he takes there, I have rook c2, that also feels good. And b3, I just take it, and that is beautiful. What can he actually play after rook f4? If he plays that, well, right now it does not create any threats, so I can take... Maybe he wants to play rook g7 now and attack this guy, and also like double along the 7th rank. That is something I should never allow, then he would be very strong. So I think knight b3 is better. This is more direct. I attack the rook immediately, he has to react. Then I give a check, he has to react. Then if I grab this f2 pawn, this is way too important. He cannot just somehow ignore it, right? And I also combine it with the threats against the king. The more problems you can create against your opponent, the tougher you make his life, more miserable you make his existence. And that is exactly your main goal in chess. It's a very brutal game. If he doesn't play rook to g1, then I don't even see a single active square. Like there are no open files except for the g file. You can play rook f1, of course, to say that you want to defend, but then you agree to a very passive position. Normally, you should never do that in chess. And by the way, I can come back to this idea of rook f4 and just grabbing the pawn. Now knight b5 would not make any sense. Yeah, he actually does that, because I'm gonna just take on c4, defending my pawn on c7. Whenever you start playing passively and not creating any threats, basically your game is over. Your opponent is gonna find a way to improve the position. For example, this move, rook f4, it doesn't feel like a very scary move, but I'm gonna just take the pawn, then this guy's gonna be hanging. I'm gonna just come back here, I'm gonna penetrate to c2. Yes, he plays knight b5, but as I said, I'm now just defending that guy. And I'm threatening rook c2 check. I do need to be a little bit careful with this knight. If I allow it to get somewhere there, that might be a problem. Okay, he plays rook g3, attacking my knight. Every single time your opponent makes a move, try to understand the threats. Sometimes it might be obvious, sometimes it's not. I have knight d4, check. Maybe I missed king to d3. Not like it helps a lot, but maybe it does. I can take here. It takes... Into d3 is interesting. What kind of alternatives do I have? Knight c1 check feels a little bit weird. I can play rook e4 check, because after king to d3 I have knight c5 check with the tempo and defending my rook on e4. That feels really good. And if he has to go backwards, well, that can never be bad for me. Although both of those guys are hanging. That is also important. Okay, so knight d4, king here, takes, knight takes, I'm a pawn up. I need to make sure it's not super dangerous for me. Maybe I just play knight f5, again creating a threat here, and rook d4 check. Yeah, that feels strong, let's go for it. To say the least, I'm gonna have rook f3 check, exchanging a pair of rooks, and then my king is out of checkmating troubles. It just takes, which makes it simpler for me, I think, because now I'm attacking both of the pawns, and he doesn't have this dangerous knight to create those threats. Okay, he wants to get this way. It's actually annoying, and if I play that, he wants to play back here, and then threaten a checkmate. I think I can deal with that, because after rook g1 I can just play h6, check, king h7, and my king is secure. The most important thing is that I cover this 7th rank. He can go here and like double the rooks, but that would not threaten anything. Rook h8 check, I'm gonna just play king g6 and laugh at him. Right, king h7, yes. Now I have a lot of ways to go about it. b6 feels a little bit passive. I like this move rook b4. Not only I defend the pawn, but I also attack this guy with the check. And the most important thing is it's not a checkmate. It's only going to be a checkmate if he plays h5, h4, but that is taking a lot of time. Do I have any checkmating ideas? I know, let's give a few checks. I have to be a little bit faster because I might get into troubles. Wait, that is a checkmate. I assumed he's gonna go here, but then at least I'm winning some time and continue with some annoying checks, but that is a checkmate immediately. Very, very nice game. I hope you have learned a lot of how you use this Philidor defense to crush anyone under 2000 elo. Let me prove that it's not luck. This opening actually works, and the win rate is actually amazing. We start with the same move. We don't really care what they play. He didn't play d4, knight s3. It might transpose, but we still go for the same exact move order, exact moves. This is why this opening is so great. You can play the same stuff no matter what. Now he plays bishop d3 before playing d4. I have no idea why he does that. I have never seen it in my life. Yet I don't care. This is how beautiful this opening is. If you play like the Caracan or the Sicilian, you need to memorize so many different variations in terms of what your opponent is doing. But here, you can literally go for the same stuff over and over again, yet it's going to be very strong. I mean, I played this exact opening against Hikaru Nakamura. I even beat world number 13 Super Grandmaster Linier Dominguez exactly with this one. So It works well, but especially under 2000 elo, you're gonna just crush everyone. They just don't know it. They see it like once out of hundreds, 200 games. They have no idea how to play, and that is why they suffer so much. They waste a lot of time and end up with devastating position as white even after the opening. Okay, bishop c2, he's wasting a lot of time, probably finally to play d4, but it's so slow. Okay, what do we do? I think we can continue with the same idea. Or maybe I have another idea. I can develop my bishop to b7, which is gonna immediately attack this guy on e4, thanks to the fact that he's very slow with his development. Finally, he accelerates, makes that, but still h3 was a waste of time. I don't like his strategy. Now I can play knight b to d7, rook e8 feels very reasonable here, bishop f8, and put even more pressure on this pawn. Let's see what he does. In this case, I didn't need to play c6 because this knight is not on c3. Very big difference. Okay, I just played bishop f8. How do you defend the pawn? I'm threatening to take and then take on e4. Doesn't care. But that is a central pawn. That is how people collapse so fast. I mean, it's not a coincidence, it's not magic, just a very solid opening that people don't know what to do with. Let's take it. I mean, of course, there might be a chance I blunder something, and now I'm gonna miserably lose after saying that. That's chess, it's life, it's normal. But I have 3 attackers. You have just 2 defenders. I have to choose whether I want to take with the bishop or with the knight. Let me know in the comments which one would you prefer. Taking with the knight makes my bishop very strong, opening up the diagonal, but also his bishop is going to be very strong, which might be dangerous in terms of his counterplay. I don't see it right now, but I don't want to give him any additional chances. But after knight e4, I can support this knight with the second one, and I can even play g6, blocking this diagonal completely, and this bishop will go to g7, where it's going to be very strong. I think I'm gonna go for knight xe4. My approach is to be as active as possible, especially under 2000 elo. This is the best strategy to crush everyone you play against, and I don't see any reason not to do it. And otherwise, this bishop along this long diagonal is such a monster. Gonna be a huge pain in the ass for my opponent. Bishop f4, okay, normal move, developing stuff, but you have just lost central pawn, very important. Don't touch this d6 pawn. Just don't touch it. If you play d5, that would make this bishop very strong. That would make this e5 square available for all of his pieces. You never want to do that. Instead, what I want to do is just bring my bishop to g7. If I don't touch this pawn, then this bishop is doing nothing here. I want to relocate it there. Yes, he plays queen to d3, as expected. But it doesn't even create a threat, right? Rook takes, I just take it back with the bishop. He can sacrifice the queen if he wants to, but in the end, I'm gonna have the queen against rook and one piece. So that's a huge material advantage. Even better d5 idea would be possible at some point. So I play bishop g7 safely. But knight f6, of course, is a very reasonable alternative, making sure everything is rock solid. I still have some useful moves to go. Maybe something like knight f6, queen d7, double on the rooks along the e-file should make sense. I'm a pawn up, so exchanging the pieces would benefit me a lot. I have really good prospects in the endgame with those 2 beautiful bishops. But it's still not over. Most of the players fail at this point because they forget about their opponent's opportunities, they relax too early, and it's never too late to spoil your game. So I want you to be careful. Always, whenever your opponent makes a move, try to understand what's the point, what he wants to do. For example, you might think that he's just blundering a piece, but he wants to take here on e8 first with a check, then I have to take back, and then he takes back here. I don't think it's a problem because, like I said, I have extra material, so changing stuff is completely fine. Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna just go for it. He cannot take it, because then I do win a piece, so he has to take over there. And now he doesn't even have rook e1 move, which would be very beneficial to get the control of this file. So I have time for something like queen e6, followed up by rook e8. He might play bishop d2 and threaten rook e1. My rook might be hanging there, so I should start with queen d5 instead, which, by the way, threatens this g2 pawn with a checkmate in one. That is how powerful this bishop is. Compare it to this guy. That is, because of those pawn structure, g6, I intentionally did it like that, is completely useless. That is why he plays bishop b3, which is a nice idea that prepares some nasty discover attacks, for example, knight b6. But I still think that we can play queen d5. The most important thing that there are no checks. Like if there would be an immediate check, I would lose my queen. But otherwise, no discard checks are working because I threaten checkmate in one. But together with that, I also create a threat of grabbing the bishop and grabbing the pawn. I don't see a single way to defend all of that at the same time. I'm gonna go ahead and play it. Don't be intimidated by your opponent. Don't think like, oh my god, he has created this discover attack, I 100% have to go somewhere else. First think, is it really dangerous for me? Yes, it was dangerous, but maybe you can create a much more stronger threat against your opponent. And then nobody cares about his discover attack. Okay, he defended this, but I think I can play queen d4, grab another pawn, center pawn, very important. My king is still safe. I do need to be a little bit careful with this f7 square. Right now it's not a problem. If needed, I can bring my rook here to defend. Or maybe my knight. Once this knight goes away, this knight can go to e5. Okay, rook d1, I like it. He brings the last piece into the game, trying to be active. Where do I go with the queen? Probably here. You cannot play rook e1. I keep an eye on this g2 pawn. The queen in the center in general is super great. It's controlling so many squares. The problem is that you cannot do that in the opening because the queen might be easily attacked. But if it cannot be attacked, then it's absolutely powerful in the center. And I'm ready finally for rook e8. Knight e5 is a decent alternative. I'm 2 pawns up, so now to win the game I have to be careful with my opponent's counterplay and just exchange everything that moves until it doesn't move anymore. Alright, f3. f3 prepares rook e1. That is quite relevant. Bishop d4 check doesn't really help me. Go away. And then my bishop is hanging. Probably I should go here to f5 to avoid rook e1 with the tempo. And then after rook e1 I can play knight e5. I don't like the fact that my queen is booted around back and forth, but finally once I stabilized the situation, it's not for free, my opponent gave up 2 pawns to make it possible. And once I managed to stabilize the situation, I'm just completely winning. Okay, knight e3. I was about to play queen c5, but I noticed there is also queen to e5. If I exchange the queens, that is all she wrote. I'm gonna convert the endgame. You still need to be careful with that, but I'm gonna show you how to do that. But also, I attacked this pawn. It's going to be even the third one. I don't want to be very greedy, but like, why not? If my opponent cannot create any dangerous threats for me. This f7 pawn is the only one, but hopefully I can deal with that. Where does the queen go? Maybe g4, because that creates a counter threat. But not really, because this bishop is also hanging. And I have a nasty move if he plays queen to g4, knight f6, threatening the queen. And if he takes, I don't take back. I take on e3 with a check first. So he plays bishop f4, but now I can take. I don't see a single threat. I'm gonna just take it. Knight f5, or I mean, it doesn't even threaten. Knight c4 back. He's going back and forth with his pieces, trying to kick my queen around. While it's a little bit embarrassing for the queen, I don't see, as long as there are enough squares for it to go, I don't see any problem. For example, c3 feels good. The more pieces you have protected, the least problems you're gonna have. Okay, my opponent finally decides to go for something active. Maybe he should, because otherwise I'm 3 points up. What does he want to do? So he takes, sacrificing a piece with an idea to take it back with the knight and threaten both the f7 pawn and this guy on b7. But this is just a pawn. Maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe it's not. There will be some nasty discover attacks. Okay, right now I'm 2 pawns up. How do I stabilize the situation not to get into trouble? I have bishop d4 check, but he just plays king h1. Doesn't really change anything. Does close the rook. Maybe I can combine ideas. I can play bishop d4, king goes away, then knight c5. If I can exchange this bishop, that helps a lot. Maybe even better. Bishop d4, king goes away, bishop d5. Right now it's not possible because it's hanging, but after the check, bishop d5 is possible, just attacking this guy and blocking this entire diagonal. I like the idea. And his bishop is, of course, still hanging. Let me go for it. If some of those pieces are leaving, then bishop e5 will always be an idea to just exchange stuff on dangerous pieces of my opponent. g5. Does he have any threats? I'm only afraid of him attacking my queen, but I don't see, like bishop e4, yes, it's possible, but to say the least, it allows me to exchange everything, being 2 pawns up, and that's good enough for me. Otherwise, he cannot attack the queen, and a bunch of his pieces are hanging. I mean, he can play something like queen f4, threatening the bishop on d4, but just takes, and this is still hanging. It can never be a problem. And at some point, if this rook ever takes something, there will be some checks against the king, so my queen is not in trouble. That's also convenient. Yeah, I think bishop b4 is the best he has here. No, he... Wait, what? He takes immediately? But why can't I just take back? What am I missing? From discover attacks, it's never possible because I have that check. Bishop b5. No, like everything is protected. There are no checks. Bishop b5, okay. But I can just take it. I don't get the points. It feels a little bit dangerous because it feels like my opponent is playing very confident, but as long as I exchange all of his pieces. Maybe he wants, but my queen is in the center. Nothing like that works. It controls everything. And finally now I'm able to develop my last piece into the game. With devastating effects, I think. Because I attack the knight, if the knight goes away... wait, I don't have a check immediately, but I do have a check. What? He continues to be either overconfident or just crazy, because everything is protected. As long as that's the case, that never works. Okay, rook e7. The queen in the center, like I told you, it's really good, very powerful, controlling everything in all possible directions, not allowing my opponent to do anything. Now finally rook e1 and queen g1 are threatening. You still need to be careful. As long as there are queens on the board, you might blunder some perpetual check, and then it's very sad that you spoil such a game. For example, if I play queen to f2, threaten rook e1, there would be queen to c4 check, and then those checks might be annoying, even though I don't believe it's going to be a perpetual. For example, I play king to g1, king to g7, queen c3 check, king h6, and I don't see any more threats, any more checks. But I also don't really threaten a checkmate, so it's not worth it, I feel. So how do you actually beat your opponent in such a position? You want to improve your position to the maximum ability and just exchange the queens. You can do that. This is the dream case scenario. So how do I exchange queens here? I like to start with king to g7. That would make my king more secure. No queen h6 is possible. And as long as I control this diagonal, no checks are possible at all. And then I can think about exchanging the queens, not allowing those checks. I can also think of creating a passer just as a deflection of my opponent to make him exchange the queens. Why not? In the end game, you want to create passers first, and then once you do that, you want to push it forward. You see that I'm normally playing slower than my opponents. First, because I try to explain all of the stuff to you. Second, because once you get the winning position, don't care that much about the time, as long as you have a little bit to checkmate him. B4, I don't understand. Why can't I just take? You don't even have any... okay, you have one check, but come on. Everything is protected here. Just get away from the checks in G8. Was a nice little trick. But after King f8, there are no checkmates, and I'm ready with Queen e1 check. Remaneuvering back to the center of the board. Yes, that's finally enough to exchange the queens. Once you do that, you immediately finish the game. This is the best strategy to crush all of your opponents under 2000 elo with this amazing opening. Check out the entire playlist over here. You're going to learn so much about it, how to handle all of the lines from your opponent, and join the 10-day opening mastery. Right now, full months of live coaching with me for free. The link is in the description.